Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and I'll be the host for today's episode. Joining me on the show this week is Ivan Temnykh. Ivan runs a YouTube channel, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics, where he's got almost 800 videos of him doing mobile diagnostics out on the East Coast on a wide range of things, even beyond the automotive world. And he's going to sit down with me today. We'll talk about his channel, what he does, mobile diagnostic work, talk scopes, scan tools, intermittent problems, and mentors in the automotive field. So really, really great talk. I've always enjoyed Ivan's videos, so it's cool to get to sit down and talk with him. But with that out of the way, let's jump right in. I was contemplating doing videos for YouTube and stuff. You know, I tried that a few years ago. Okay. It was terrible. It's so much work, or so much more work to edit a video.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'm sure you know. You do plenty of this for your YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly. Do you run a shop yourself, or?
No, I teach for a local community college for the automotive program. That's my job until about 2:00 in the afternoon. And then I go and I do some mobile diagnostics and programming in the area between my home and there. And I do that just to, stay sharp, stay up on things, and stay busy. And it definitely does that for sure.
Exactly. So that's where your content for your courses comes from, is your case studies?
A lot of it, yeah. I can relate what I'm doing and seeing out in the field to the classroom and say, hey, this is what technicians are struggling with out in the field. This is what professional shops are getting hung up on, and it's not outside of the realm of possibility to solve some of these problems. A lot of them end up being basic electrical problems. And so it's definitely helped out a lot. I just found when I stopped being a full-time technician, because I was a tech at Firestone for almost 10 years. And I just felt like when I stopped doing that every day, that I was like, wow, I'm going to fall behind, really quickly. Within 3 to 4 years, the stuff I'm teaching is not going to be relevant. So I wanted something that would keep me in it.
Yeah. That's what I've seen. Technology is going, so fast that you just learn new stuff every day, even though you might be in the field every day. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and sometimes all the book stuff, the technical stuff, doesn't work the way that you would expect it to or think it would out in the field.
Yeah, nothing beats experience, getting your ass kicked, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, that's one of the great things too to share with the students is, hey, here's some of my failures.
Oh, those are the biggest learning opportunities.
Well, I think it helps you to, connect with the students a little bit better. It makes you more human, right? When you kind of show, hey, I'm not perfect. I screw up. I do dumb stuff. It just makes you more relatable and engages better with the students.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So you've got a YouTube channel, and I encourage everybody listening to check that out. I'll have a link in the show notes, Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. How long have you been running that channel for?
I started in 2015, so this will be the 7th year, I guess. Time flies. Right? It was just yesterday.
What actually got you going with the YouTube channel in the first place?
Well, I guess before I got into this field, I guess I was just on YouTube looking at automotive stuff and what's out there. Like Eric the Car Guy, if you remember, his channel was popular, and then he had Scanner Danner on one of his videos. I'm like, oh, well, this is an interesting way of going about it. This guy doesn't just look at spark plugs; he actually uses an oscilloscope. And I've always been, electricity, magnetism, circuits. That was one of my favorite subjects. I'm like, well, that's cool. You can actually fix cars using stuff that most other shops don't even know what it is, and use like the scientific method. So, that's really neat. And then, Eric O at South Main Auto, he was only an hour from my parents' house up in upstate New York there. So on one trip, I just stopped by. I was actually riding my motorcycle and just said, like, "Yo, Eric, man, I watch your videos." He was just starting out too. And we hit it right off. And I'm like, "Hey, do you have any cars that are, giving you a hard time?" And he had that Hyundai with the twisted camshaft. I don't know if you've seen that video on his channel, the very first one that we did together. And I'm like, well, this is really cool. I'll just start putting videos on my, start up my own channel and go from there, see how it goes. And it's been a really, really fun journey.
Well, I've definitely enjoyed a lot of your videos. I looked before we did this. You've got almost 800 videos on there right now.
It's insane. I'm like, man, that was a lot of time spent on just putting together videos. But I just love to share, real world experiences. This is like real world problem solving. It's really my passion, and it's really cool to connect with the community. And I learned a lot from just reading comments on my own videos. So.
Oh yeah. And I mean, just in the short time that I've been doing this podcast, it's been so cool to get to connect with different people. I mean, all over the world. Like I've talked to people from Australia and the UK.
Right.
And it's really cool to get to connect and grow somewhat of a community.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, because I tried doing the video thing and realized it was way too much work. But if you have, let's say, like a 40-minute video that you're making, what's the prep time behind the scenes in order to make a video just that length? Because obviously it's more than 40 minutes.
It really depends. I try to film just like the interesting parts, so I have less editing to do. Because when you start cutting stuff out and you have to watch it yourself one or two times, it kind of gets time consuming. So you kind of get more efficient at just filming the raw footage, and that way you just stitch it together and it's basically done. But it depends on the case study, if it's like a 2-part series with the diag and then the repair later. I try to break it up, 20 minutes seems to be a good, attention span for most people. If it goes to half an hour, that happens sometimes, but it's just kind of adapt to, just keep modifying until you get to that efficient, steady state.
Sure.
Yeah.
I suppose you do it enough and you get more proficient at it as time goes on.
Sure. Yeah. Like with anything.
What was your background as far as how you got into the automotive field before you started to go out and do this stuff mobile?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I was just looking back, I guess I was always obsessed with anything on wheels, from bicycles, and it was motorcycles, and then cars, obviously. And it was always a hobby, but really taking it to the more, I guess, the professional level was back in 2012. I was still in grad school here at Penn State College, and just for fun, I was working on the side at my buddy's automotive shop, just doing anything in the bag. brakes, oil changes, suspension, some diag stuff. And I enjoyed that so much, I ended up spending more time there and showing up to the lab less. And then my advisor was like, dude, I don't think you're cut out for grad school. I'm like, yeah, I agree. So, so, so then I worked at his shop full time for about a year, and then just started my own thing because there was enough demand for more, specialized diagnostic stuff. And now he calls me up if he's stuck on a car, so that kind of works out.
Well, hey, yeah, I mean, that's impressive,
Hmm.
to just jump into this field just by, okay, hey, I'm working at a shop here and now I'm going to start going out and doing this really complex stuff. But that's the thing, I've always enjoyed your mindset or your take on this field and more, because you're not afraid to take on anything, right? Like, I know on your channel, like, you're not going to say no to very
Right,
much.
right. I've only turned down a handful of jobs, and that was probably like a BMW, engine swap or something. Like, nope. But diagnostic stuff, I wouldn't turn anything away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you've got a whole playlist of things that are not cars, tractors and construction equipment. And most people would probably just be like, no, dude, I work on cars.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, it's all those experiences have been very valuable. They just make you more well-rounded. Anything from the old stuff with points and carburetors to construction equipment, tractors. It's all related. There's a lot of similarities, and the approach stays the same, but you get to learn more systems, and that actually makes you, better with just being more open-minded in terms of going into any problem-solving situation.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's worthwhile to go through that struggle, especially when you're learning something for the first time, maybe on the fly, but you're like, okay, I got to do this because it's almost going to be like an investment for the future that I can gain that knowledge.
Yep, 110% agree with that. Yep, you have to suffer through some stuff. If you don't know the system, take a time out, do your research. Like my good friend Keith DeFazio at New Level Auto, that's what he always preaches. Just grab a laptop and a notebook and just read up on the description and operation if you're not familiar with how the system works, and it pays huge dividends. Yep.
Well, and to, at least attempt to figure out how something works when you don't have a description and operation, because sometimes that
Oh
happens,
yeah.
but to figure it out and get creative to get to a solution.
Basically, a wiring diagram is more, I'd say, more valuable than anything written in words. That's what I've learned. And just if I have a wiring diagram, there, I have a good chance of figuring it out. If I don't, then it's going to take exponentially longer, and we'll still get there, hopefully. But yeah.
Well, hey, that's a skill set all into itself, is being able to look at a wiring diagram and figure out how that system or component works just by how they have it wired up. Okay, they got a power going here, ground going here. It's got to work this way. And I've worked with my students to try to do that. Like, let's see if we can figure this out just
Yep.
by looking at the diagram. And it's not always possible, but it's kind of like a superpower if you can manage it.
Absolutely. And like I'd say at least half the diags you can almost pinpoint just by having a wiring diagram and the symptoms. And then just kind of playing scenarios through your head, like, okay, so this is the symptoms. So what happens if there's voltage here? Would that affect this? And even obviously you want to see the car yourself, but when you get it, then you're like, okay, this is my game plan. I'm going right for these checks, and oftentimes you nail it right away. Um, so yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one thing I've seen you do in your videos is, particularly when maybe you're chasing an intermittent fault and it's difficult to get it to act up, is that you've introduced a fault into the system, or let's say
Mm.
removed a power source or pulled a fuse from a module in attempts to duplicate what happens when the fault is present to try to prove something out, right? To say, okay, if I pull this fuse, does it give me the same symptoms as when the actual fault is present? And it's a pretty cool mindset to take, is especially for intermittent stuff. And I mean, honestly, when I was a tech at Firestone, I don't think I ever really would have thought to do something like that. I'm just waiting for it to happen, but we can introduce some stuff and see, does the same thing happen? Okay. And if it doesn't, well, maybe it's not that fuse. It's not this power source. That wouldn't make the module do that.
Right. Or sometimes it doesn't do what you expect, and that makes it more fun. Yeah. I think you can call it either the bypass test, or like you said, try to recreate it. On intermittent problems. That's oftentimes what can save the whole process. Is okay, we can recreate it manually by doing this. Now, why is it happening in its natural environment when you're driving? So at least you have some idea what to look for.
What's your approach to intermittence? I mean, what's the point where you just say no?
If it happens once a year, no.
Yeah.
Like I get quite a few phone calls from people out of state who want me to look at something, like, they'll either bring their car here or want me to schedule a trip. And if it's an intermittent problem, right off the bat, I ask them, okay, how often does it happen? Every day, once a week, once a month, once a year? And that, I'm like, sometimes you just have to wait for it to get worse. Like, those questions are very key. Maybe it happens after a rainstorm. Like, okay, now we're looking at water intrusion or something getting wet.
Yeah, for me recently, I've just been turning down most intermittents. For my schedule, it just doesn't make any sense, because I'm limited in the afternoon and I'm trying to hit up maybe 2 or 3 appointments, and you don't know what you're getting into for an intermittent. And I just tell shops, hey, if we can't duplicate this or get it to happen within a half hour, I'm not your guy, at least right now. Wait until it's more frequent, and I'll see if I can help. But it just doesn't make any sense for me, because you could be there. I've been there in the past where you're sitting there waiting, just driving the vehicle around for an hour, hoping that you have hoping you have a scope, and then hoping you have it connected to the right component when it actually does act up. And it's such a time killer.
Exactly. I know what you mean. Yes, stuff like that. Sometimes the car shows up and it's like it fixes itself. I've had that a few times. I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? Yeah, I can keep it for a week and just drive it around once in a while and see if it happens. But yeah, you can't really nail them all if the car doesn't act up for you.
Yeah, I remember doing that, as a younger technician, is working at a mom and pop shop. We'd have an intermittent and we talk to the customer and just say, hey, do you want me to take this vehicle and drive it around as my own after hours, when I'm going home and stuff, with your permission, of course, and we'll hook up our stuff and try to catch this to do it. And yeah, you'd end up having the car for 2-3 days. And I have no idea if we even charged appropriately for that. I really wasn't in charge of that where I was working there, but man, it can really, really kill some time, and it's tough to charge for that time on an intermittent job.
Yeah. In this field, keeping a regular schedule is impossible.
No kidding, right?
Yeah. So when you're scheduling appointments, I'm like, well, it'll maybe Friday afternoon. Just give me a call then.
Yeah, I've gotten to that point too, where I just tell people I'll be there in the afternoon, or, I can guarantee one appointment, and that's my first one of the day.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much it. After that, I mean, you don't know how these jobs are going to go. It could be a 5-minute job. It could be a 1-hour job. And a lot of times you don't know going into it.
Yeah. Sometimes you think something's going to be quick, and it really turns into a ball or a can of worms or whatever.
Yes, 100%.
Like, oh, you didn't tell me that it was doing this, or it has a big draw, or whatever. They just said that the ABS light's coming on. Like, oh, that's it, really? Not the other 20 lights on the dashboard.
Yeah, I remember as a tech, getting a vehicle in with a noise complaint, and you go out and drive this vehicle, and you'd hear the front wheel bearing just screaming like an
Mm,
airplane as you're driving down the road. And like, okay, well, that must be the noise that was on the ticket because it said noise. So you
right.
sell them a wheel bearing, you put it in there, they come pick it up, and then it's a comeback because they were after a little squeak in the front end over bumps. And they're like, well, how did you even hear that over the wheel bearing? But you really do have to question the actual driver of the vehicle, the owner of the vehicle, if you want to get the best information.
Yes, I agree with that 100% too.
Yeah, just
Hmm.
get as much information from them as possible, or go drive it with them, especially if it's intermittent, and be like, what are you doing to get this to act
Right.
up?
And I'm in a college town here, so often there's a language barrier too.
Oh,
Yeah, when they say it's shaking, like does it shaking when it shifts or when you're cruising, or there's a misfire, but it's only at idle. And so it's kind of but you work through it. But you have to talk to the customer directly. You can't go through like a service advisor or somebody like that. Just that wouldn't work.
yeah, I struggled with that in the field, just missing information because there's that barrier between you and the customer or the service writer. And even if they're good at what they're doing, they don't always pick up on those little things that you'll
Mm,
pick up on as a technician. So there was plenty of times when I just needed the direct answer. So I'd call up the customer and talk to him on the phone.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, when I started working at my buddy's shop, I was supposed to be the technician, and I love talking to the customers, and I kind of got yelled at that. Like, you just do the work there. You're not supposed to be talking to the customers. And I'm like, well, it's their car. It's like I'm fixing their problem. So yeah, that's why I like working for myself.
Yeah. And you deal one on one with both individuals and shops right now, right?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Okay. And are those people that have found your YouTube channel, or are they local people?
Again, mixed bag. Just yeah, from neighbors to out of state people to like an hour away. um, some shops in town. Then if I go like on a longer trip, kind of works out that people will schedule stuff, on the way. So yeah, it's a really good variety.
You mentioned Keith DeFazio earlier. Super smart guy, another really good
Hmm.
YouTube channel. I know everybody's hoping that he makes more videos, but you connected with him and did some videos
Hmm.
in Staten Island with him. How did you end up getting connected with Keith?
Yeah, the Staten Island Express. Yeah, Keith just found me through YouTube. He is like one of the coolest networking uh, people out there that I know in terms of the automotive field. He will go through YouTube, like find channels that he kind of likes and kind of subscribe to them or put them on his watch list. And he just contacted me. I think it was 2016, about a year after I started my channel, and he was just like, "Dude, you got to come down to New York City. It'll be worth your while. You got to see what I'm doing here." And at first I was like, well, I don't know who this guy is. but but yeah, it was really really amazing.
Yeah, some of those cars and case studies there on Staten Island are pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, totally different ball game. I've never seen anything like it. That island is just if in doubt, it's probably the PCM. Like, how often does a computer fail? Apparently all the time. I don't know what it is. But yeah, that was huge, huge learning experience. That really jump started, my own work here. Just having Keith as a mentor and him letting me go out on my own, getting my ass kicked, and learning from that. I couldn't, it couldn't go to any school to learn that. It was real world struggle, and then having someone to discuss it with, or if all else fails, he would show up after he did 15 cars. I was still working on my second one, and like, hey, did you check the pink wire yet? I'm like, Keith, how did you know it was the pink wire? Yeah, so it was really awesome.
Do you think it's worthwhile for a younger person to seek out a mentor in their chosen profession.
Oh yeah. If you can find someone like that, take full advantage of it. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
finding somebody who can help, set you up for success and guide you in the direction that you need to go, help figure out what's right for you. And that might be throwing you to the wolves, right? It's difficult, but you're going to learn a whole lot, and
Yeah, and
not everybody can handle it.
you'll figure out very fast if you want to stick with the field. It might at first you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great, and I can totally do this, and you can. But no matter how much courses you've taken, and if you have all the tools, you're just starting out. So that first whatever year or two, that's going to be the learning opportunities, and you'll figure out very quickly if you want to stick with it. It's not an easy field to be in, but you have to be passionate about it, and it is very satisfying once you get up and going.
Yeah, it's definitely not for everybody. It comes with a lot of challenges, but that's honestly a big part of what I enjoy
Mhm.
about it is it's not the same thing every day. It's not monotonous. You never know exactly what's going to be headed your way, and I've really come to enjoy that.
Oh yeah, you kind of get a hunger for it. Okay, like I remember Keith saying that about 90% of the stuff he's come across he's already seen, so that's kind of just mundane stuff. But when you got that, one case study a week that was really something new, you got really excited about it. And for me, it was all new at that point. So, you know.
Yeah, I was talking to another mobile technician in Ohio, Brian Mann, and he was saying, I've been doing this for a long time, 10 plus years, and so many of these modules are done over and over again, and the programming side of it. And he's like, sometimes when I hit that button to program, I'm kind of just waiting for something to go wrong. Like, come on, I want something interesting today.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't do that much programming. I do mostly diagnostics, like the harder case studies. Around here we don't have that many shops, and they really don't. I guess I don't know. If you're on Staten Island, you're doing programming like half the day, like Keith was. But for me, it would be just a lot of overhead to have all the subscriptions and all the OEM, pass-throughs and tools and stuff. So if something really needs to be replaced or programmed, if I can't do it, then yeah, it'll be cheaper for them to actually take it to the dealer and just say, just program this module versus, me buying subscriptions and all that stuff. But
Well, yeah, that's the thing is it's smart to kind of figure out where you want to be successful in because there's so many different avenues that you can go in
oh
this
yeah,
field. There's so many different worlds that you can expand into. Diagnostics is one, programming, but then you can expand to keys and then you expand
right.
to ADOS, and there's so many more different directions that you can go. And it's really impressive the guys that do all of it. Like, Keith Perkins, for instance, he's got all those things going on. And I don't know how they keep up and be the best at everything.
Yeah, if you're in a big metro area and you have enough demand for all those things, then by all means. So it really depends on your market.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to be a specialist in each one of these areas. I mean, if you want to do it mobile, if you want to go to shops and say, I am the professional offering this professional service,
Hmm.
but there's guys out there figuring it out. You see, other YouTube channels and people on Facebook, and honestly, that's really inspiring to me. It's what inspired
Hmm.
me to attempt the mobile thing and try it for myself because I'm looking at, like for instance, Keith's channel,
Okay.
and I'm like, wow, this is impressive. Like, here's this 5 minute video of figuring out this problem that would have taken most guys an hour plus, and they're out there being successful at this. So I'm going to do my best to to mimic it.
Hmm.
And obviously, I'm not keeping up with Keith's 20 cars a day that he was doing up there, but doing what I can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, my workflow is generally, if it's interesting, I'll get the camera out, so that eats up a little bit of time, and then, but the thought process is more. more detailed then. So since I'm, talking about it basically, and that's, if I was on Staten Island, I probably wouldn't have time to do that, and I would do more cars. But I don't know if it'd be as satisfying to really dig deep and find like the actual root cause and do the little experiments or whatever to
Well, I've noticed
pull, pull.
too that you'll take the components apart that are broken and see, hey, maybe we can fix it.
I mean, nothing to lose there, right?
Right, right.
Might as well see what's inside the magic box.
Well, yeah, I think it's worthwhile, spend a little bit of time there because it can help you understand that component better for the next time that you have to deal with it. You'll know exactly what's inside of that component. Where is this lever, or what component is inside this other component, or whatever it might be. But it will boost your knowledge for the next time. So it's worth spending the time there when potentially you could be moving on to another one already.
Right. If you take something apart, you'll probably learn something new, and that's part of. I think that's the number one reason I'm in this field is because you just learn something new every day, and it just keeps it interesting.
Right. Do you know Corey Brueggemann, I think is his last name, up there in New York, that took over for Keith?
Yeah. We've done a couple together when Keith was still there. Yeah, I met Corey. Mhm.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. You get to hear from him from time to time and
Yeah,
see what he's up to.
he's another one of those New York City people who just doesn't sleep.
Right.
I mean, the guy works like 2 or 3 jobs. He's
Yeah, he does the mobile thing, and he does the bus transit thing, and he'll sleep there and then go to his mobile job. And I'm like, how do you even keep up with that? I wouldn't last a month doing that.
I could barely make it 2 or 3 days trying to stay with Keith. He was like, "Oh yeah, you can join me after I spent 2 hours at this body shop doing programming, at 6 a.m. and I would join him at 8." I'm like, dude, he was up writing invoices till like 4 a.m. the previous day. It was nuts. So that's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah, that's crazy. What do you do, or do you do additional training outside of what you're learning in the field? And what would be your preferred method of training for the automotive world?
Well, before all the COVID stuff, yeah, I tried to go to at least the trainings in Pennsylvania, like their Super Saturday, and um, our local parts store puts on what is it? I think CarQuest. They have the local training seminars here a couple times a year. Other than that, yeah, not too many formal training seminars or anything. But like I would maybe go visit Keith or something, do a couple case studies with him, and just share information. Um, just putting out case studies and sharing them on YouTube. That's you learn stuff there. Is obviously people with a certain car, they might be very, very experienced with that, and I'm just seeing it for the first time, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that happens, and that's because of this common failure." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll keep that in the back of the head for the next time."
Do you keep any records to go along with your diagnostics and repairs? I mean, obviously you have your YouTube channel, so that's probably the best thing is to refer to, but do you keep anything in a file or written down, known goods or just notes to yourself, or things you notice like this module does this in this situation on this car?
I mean, I always take notes on everything, even if it's just an oil change here. I'll just, you always write down the vehicle, the mileage, and date, and what you did. And in terms of interesting case studies, yeah, the YouTube library is basically an awesome database. I have referred to my older videos. I'm like, oh man, I swear I've seen this before. Like, oh, there it is. Let me just watch my video and repeat the process. That works pretty well. In terms of waveforms, like Pico, on the Pico scope, I always save waveforms and just categorize it by, make and model. So pretty decent library there. I also, if it's in a video, I'll put it like on my Google Drive and share that just in case other people want to grab those waveforms. So, but
Yeah, it's just been something I've been doing for the last few years. Is I keep a Google Docs, and I'll make a new document for each vehicle, and I'll just jot stuff down that I noticed or found out while I was working on something. Like, this car acts this way if it loses the ground here. This module does this if it loses a power feed here, or if this sensor is bad, this is the result. And it just sort of is a nice thing to refer to down the line when maybe I come up against the same problem, but it's been a couple years and I don't exactly remember all the details. I can pull it up right there and refer to it, and hopefully help myself, because there's too much to know. And I feel like every one thing that I learn, something else, everything that goes in my brain, something else falls out the other side, and I'm not in charge of what that something is.
Yes, some people can fit a lot more into their head than than others. I always take just pen and paper. For me, that's the best way to kind of remember stuff. And yeah, I have like, I go through at least one of these, one subject notebooks, probably in less than a year. So yeah, there's a whole library of those now.
Yeah, I got one of those right here.
Yeah, you always take notes in the field?
Yeah, when I'm in the field, I usually use my phone, but I really do like writing stuff down. I think it helps stick in your head a little bit better. Like, I got a list of all the things that I need to do, or like for this interview, just jotted down some notes. And there's something about, an actual pen or pencil in your hand. It connects better with your brain. At least for me. It may not be the same for everybody.
Right. Yes, especially for those case studies that kind of get deep and you have a lot of stuff to keep track of, like you're doing voltage drops or fuses in like 100 fuses in a fuse box. Okay, which ones have current on them? You just have to write stuff down, because there's no way you can remember that and move on to the next step.
Right, exactly. Do you have a favorite scan tool right now of what you're using, or do you have maybe a first grab, the thing that you would grab if you didn't know what kind of diagnosis that you're getting into?
If it's newer than like 2008, the Think Tool Pro S with the launch software on it, I've been using that for the last year at least. And with the modern cars, with networks, with all the modules, the first thing I do, just plug it in, health report, scan everything, get all the codes, save that, and then you can either reboot the whole thing, clear all DTCs, and you can see the modules on, it has like topology, the map. It's super helpful. Because cars have more than one network usually nowadays, and you can see, what's what, and just kind of get a feel for what the car, the topology of all the modules before you dive in.
Have you found that to be pretty accurate as far as how it breaks the different networks down? Meaning, like, if there's a CAN bus and then there's a LIN bus and then there's like a body CAN bus, and it breaks it into those separate sections. Have you found that to be accurate?
Yes, I've actually been really impressed with that topology. It's usually spot on.
Yeah, I've got a Topped On, which I'm pretty sure is similar. I think that's based off of the launch software too, but I've definitely been impressed with it. The graphing I really like on it. I've always used an Autel for a long time, and the graphing on Autel was never really that great, and I don't have a Snap-on, so if I'm graphing some data for drivability or whatever, I'm definitely grabbing that Topped On.
So you just hit the graph button and it puts up to 12 graphs on the screen?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, because I think Autel, you can only do 4, but you get 12 of them up there with that thing.
Yeah, but when it comes to recording that data, though, that's a pain in the butt. You get the live graphs. What I usually do, I just hit the snapshot button if I see something interesting. Just take a picture of the screen. I used to, my go-to before, a few years ago, was the Snap-on Veris. but I only had that updated to 2017. But in terms of data, saving the scan data and then reviewing it, nothing beats the Snap-on.
Yeah, I've heard other guys say that as well. They definitely all have their strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
Do you have an all-time favorite scan tool? And maybe it's not relevant now or it's not the best tool ever, but it was just, a game changer for you, one that really made a difference for you as a tool.
Well, yeah, I mean, chronologically, I guess, let's see, what did I buy first? The Autel DS708, that was my first kind of real OEM level, as Scotty Kilmer says, OEM level scan tool.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, you can really get into more than just OBD2.
Right.
That was almost 10 years ago. And then I bought a used Snap-on Veris from the Snap-on guy, like a trade-in for $1,000. And that was my first like big screen kind of scanner, but that still had the keys in it, with the cord. And then the next game changer was the newer Veris Pro wireless. I'm like, all right, now we're talking. You can get out, you can be under the car checking the evap vent solenoid, and have the scanner right there, which is really cool. And after that was the launch stuff, and the Think Tool Pros is the current latest and greatest. I've really don't use the Snap-on anymore that much, except for on older GM trucks and stuff.
Yeah, I had one of those DS708s too, and that was a big game changer for me because I'd been using an OTC Pegasus prior to that, and I finally got this Autel, and I was blown away by how much more I could do with it and how many more modules I can access and special functions. It was huge.
Right. And now it seems like a dinosaur, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
But it was just such a difference compared to what I had before, and I could take on more jobs and not have to be scared of that BMW. Like, it will actually connect and read codes from these modules, so I have a chance at fixing this thing.
Yeah. Exactly. If you can't talk to the car, then you're already handicapped.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with some of these new tools like the Launch and Autel and stuff like that. That they just have such a wide coverage. I mean, they all have their holes, they all do, but just the amount that a single tool can cover now.
Yeah, the coverage. Yeah, I mean, you could do like Chinese cars if you wanted to, or exotics.
Yeah, you got this huge list of all of these Chinese makes that I have never even heard of, but I guess I'm prepared if one of them shows up one day.
Yeah. No, yeah, I wish there was a better scanner for old Europeans, like pre-OBD2. I run into those once in a while, and I'm just like, I can't talk to like the sunroof module on a 94 BMW. Like, what tool could do that? I don't even know.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that the old school blue box auto logic was the answer to a lot of that, but I don't know myself.
Yeah. Only Keith is the only guy I know who has one.
Yeah,
He's got everything.
That's the thing about doing this is there's so much to buy too. It's almost endless. Like every time I turn around, I'm like, oh man, I could use that, or I want this new tool.
Yeah, but also once you reach a certain threshold, like I haven't bought that much stuff over the last couple of years, actually. Once you have a decent scanner and it's up to date and you have a good scope and your test lights never get outdated.
That's true.
Other than that, hand tools, like you very rarely run into some tool that you really don't have any need, and then okay, you buy it, but it's not like a constant monthly expense.
Yeah. And so I do a lot of the programming stuff, and what I find is, oh, hey, there's this tool that gets around the anti-theft process for this particular vehicle, so I don't have to purchase the subscription or have the factory tool and get around it some way. So yeah, that's worth it to spend the money on that for me.
Right. So that's partially why I don't do so much of that for, keys and module programming, just because not being in a big metro area, that just wouldn't be cost effective.
That totally makes sense.
When'd you get your first scope?
Oh boy. Um, I couldn't even tell you what the model number was. One of the first shops I worked at, we had one from the Mac or the Matco guy, some real basic thing. It looked like an etch a
Uh,
sketch I was drawing on the screen, but that was the first one, and we had others at Firestone. But the problem was,
uh,
like most shops, I never really pulled them out to use them. I would only pull them out when I was in trouble, and then I barely knew how to use it, and I didn't know what I was looking at anyway, so it was barely any help at all.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to use it and be comfortable with it to actually make it work.
Yeah.
Without problem.
And where I really got into it was when I bought a Pico.
Hmm.
I bought my own 2-channel Pico, and I'm like, hey, okay, I'm going to figure this stuff out. I'm really going to get into it, hook up to known good cars, and save files because you could do that with a Pico. And that's what
Hmm.
really took off for me. And I've been using that or a version of a Pico and the U-scope ever since. I probably use the U-scope more on a day-to-day basis right now, and then I'll use the Pico a lot more in class with the
Okay.
students because it's
Interesting.
easy to share stuff.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I've seen the U scope. I know a few people who have it. I mean, it's little and cute, but one channel for me wouldn't cut it. If you're using a scope, you need at least two because you want to correlate something with something else. So I'm just like the Pico is my go-to every day.
Yeah, it all depends on what you need it for. I mean, if you're doing a cam crank,
Exactly.
right,
Yeah.
the U-scope's out. That's going to be pretty useless for you. You got to have something 2-channel like the Pico. Most of my network stuff I do with the U-scope because I just need a
Hmm.
visual representation of what's going on, and it covers most of my use there. But yeah, if you have any reason you need to compare two things,
Yeah.
why not go with the Pico? And I'll
Right.
tell you what, having a laptop with a touchscreen, with the Pico, doing the pinch and zoom feature on that's lights out.
Oh
I
yeah.
love that feature of the touchscreen and the Pico combined together.
Yep. And also having a mouse with a scroll wheel, you can just zoom with that.
Oh, nice.
That's what I've.
Yeah, and I know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people out there like the Snap-on scope. I've never really used one, but I've heard that's pretty capable as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's what I used mostly before I got the Pico was the Veris 4 channel. Yeah, I mean it'll do the job, but once you have a tablet and the Pico scope, it's just so much easier to analyze waveforms, save stuff, share it. So there's no comparison there.
Yeah, we use some for the students in class too. And I found, once you explain the software and the buttonology, they're pretty user friendly. And the biggest reason is it helps them to visualize what's going on in the circuit, right? Because, so many of them don't have a picture in their heads of what's going on. And the scope is, doing that, drawing a picture for you to help you understand what's going on
Mm-hmm.
the circuit.
Right. Yeah, there's kind of a misconception that using a scope is really advanced and only, in very hard situations. But actually, using a scope is kind of like cheating, On a voltmeter, you just see one number. On a scope, you see everything. So, and it's not that hard to learn to use. So once you get a grasp of it, you'll just use it all the time. And you can see really, really cool stuff. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah, and you can obviously go down the rabbit hole on stuff. That's possible, but you can catch things that you'd never be able to see otherwise. And you can learn things about how something works that you wouldn't know otherwise. You'd see, oh, the module's trying to do this at this point because
Yeah.
of what you saw
Yep.
happening on the circuit.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Today I had an interesting one. 2016 Mazda CX-5. That again, the complaint was like, "Oh, the ABS light comes on when you're driving." Like, okay, no big deal. And it ended up escalating into, "Hey, the car stalls when you turn your high beams on." Like, Yeah. So I was there for longer than an hour. I'm like, so okay, I see a brand new alternator, brand new battery. The guy just replaced the ABS module because the dealership told him to, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be really fun, not just a boring ABS light where you lose your speed sensors or something.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, the camera came out for that for sure.
Nice. I'll look forward to that one then. Did you get it resolved in one trip then?
Didn't get it resolved, and it supposedly needs some parts, but we'll cross that bridge probably later this week.
Okay. Yeah, I always like to see the after,
Oh
or
yeah,
I guess for me too, sometimes I'll go to a shop and I'll make a diagnosis and I like to hear about it afterwards. Like, oh yeah, this fixed it. Sometimes when I don't hear from a shop, no news is good news, but, um,
yeah.
sometimes I don't hear from them. Just like in the back of my head, like, huh, was that just the wrong call? And then they were just pissed and they just didn't call me. So I like to have that conclusion on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Is it good news or bad news? And I do like to follow up in a few days. I'm like, hey, did you guys get that whatever fixed? And
Yeah, I'll usually do that when I get back to the shop for another reason. When they call me, they're like, "Hey, how did that whatever turn out?" Blah blah blah, just so I can wrap it up.
it's nice to get a resolution for sure.
If you were to give some advice to a younger technician or a technician coming up in this field, what do you think that might be? And I realize that's kind of a general question.
You mean diagnostic specific?
Yeah, it definitely could be. And I suppose this is the automotive diagnostic podcast, so.
Right. I mean, it'll depend on the situation. If you're working for a dealership or a small shop, or if you want to start your own business, very, very different approaches, right? If you have your own business, you can't just be good at diagnostics. You also have to be decent at running a business, which all in itself can be harder than, the actual car repairs. So, yeah, I mean, any like general advice is definitely do it because you love it, and yeah, not just because it's not a 9 to 5 job usually. And if it was a 9 to 5 job, like working at a dealership, I probably would not enjoy it as much. You know, people are different. Like some people like being their own boss, and some people just like following orders. So it really, really depends on that. But regardless, you have to have that thirst for knowledge and be organized in terms of keeping your notes and thoughts and data, so you'll get more efficient, with experience.
Yeah, some people just want that 9 to 5 job that they can clock out and be done with and not have to think about until they're at work again. But I think if you're going to strive to be one of the best in this field, you should definitely have that passion. It should be one of those things where you're always thinking about it, even when you're at home. You're experimenting, you're learning, you're training, and not everybody has that. Not everyone wants that, and that's totally fine. But I think it'd be good for a young person to figure that out at an early age.
Yeah, that's key. Right. Yeah, and that's where when you said, if you can find a mentor and tag along, or just do like an internship or something, that's a great way to get into it and basically see, do I want to do this full time or not?
Okay, well, cool. Hey, Ivan, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Just one more time for everybody listening, and I'll have this in the show notes. Check out Ivan's YouTube channel. It's Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. But hey, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Cool. Well, yeah, that was a very enjoyable conversation. That I've never done a podcast before. That was kind of fun.
Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode. I want to give Ivan another big thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with me. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Hopefully, you did as well. Make sure to check out his YouTube channel. If you haven't already, there'll be a link in the show notes. I want to thank everybody out there for listening and the feedback for the podcast. Again, I appreciate hearing from everybody. And if you want to be on the show, reach out to me. We'll set something up. So with that all out of the way, let's get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.